Across the fence as we lead up to Arbor Day, our communities are preparing for the arrival of an insect that devastates ash trees. Learn how you can be on the front lines protecting the ash and many benefits of this important tree. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Arbor Day in Vermont is this Friday. It's a special day set aside to celebrate trees and all they provide. This year, awareness of trees may be more important than ever. As Rebecca Gollin reports, Vermont communities are developing action plans to protect one of the state's most abundant and important tree species from devastation.
What makes this tree really impressive is its size.
Montpelier Parks Director and tree warden Jeff Bayer spends a lot of time tracking the health of the trees in town.
Healthy trees communicates to others the vibrancy and health of the community.
Based on the large and hardy trees lining many of its streets, Montpelier is a very healthy community.
It's right in between the sidewalk and the road. There's very little soil. Salt, cars, sidewalk plows. For a tree to get to the size and scale is really unusual, unique, and an incredible amount of time to get to this size.
Because of harsh conditions, a lot of street trees only last about 5 to 7 years, according to Bayer. What makes Montpelier's downtown unique is the size and age of many of the trees. Bayer thinks this one is over 50 years old. But that's not the only reason he pays special attention to it.
Almost all of our significant downtown trees within the sidewalk areas, the ones that are huge and beautiful, most of them, a really high percentage, are ash trees.
Ash trees are popular in many Vermont towns because they're fast-growing and one of the few native species that is salt-tolerant, an important characteristic for any street tree in Vermont. Bayer estimates that ash makes up about 25% of Montpelier's downtown trees. But those trees are facing a deadly threat.
When that comes through, we'll go from this beautiful, graceful canopy to just about a blank slate. That's what we're facing, and I'm sure many other communities are facing with the ash tree.
What communities and ash trees are facing is a relentless predator that leaves destruction in its wake.
The emerald ash borer is an invasive insect from Asia. It was first introduced out in the Detroit area. And what happened in Michigan was it took them a while to really recognize what it was and to figure it out.
Though not large in size, the emerald ash borer, or EAB, can overwhelm in numbers. Often spread to new areas on firewood, the signs of an infestation can remain subtle until it's too late.
It's hard to find it initially when it first comes into an area. Oftentimes you don't see the damage for 2 or 3 years until after the insects really become established in a tree or a group of trees.
Paul Frederick is a forester with the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. He and other foresters around the state are planning for the arrival of the EAB. It has not yet been identified in Vermont, but has been seen in every surrounding state, as well as Quebec.
They found the insect as far as up north as Rensselaer County, which is pretty close to Bennington County in Vermont. So we're pretty well surrounded at this point. So these are all ash.
When the insect does arrive, Vermont needs to be ready.
Not all ash are killed. They've been able to determine that there are some ash that survive, but 98% of the ash essentially dies in those areas from the infestation eventually.
A hard wood with an appealing pattern, ash is used to make products from sporting gear and tools to fine furniture. At about 7% of the standing wood in the state, around 150 million trees, the economic impact of a near total die-off of ash could be enormous. Not to mention the cost to communities and homeowners who will have to remove or replace their ash trees.
As part of the preparedness plan, you really need to know how many ash trees you have, how vulnerable is your community to
John
the invasion,
Aquilashik is a
to the
member of
emerald ash
Montpelier's
borer.
Tree Board, a volunteer group that helps maintain downtown trees as well as plan for the future. He took the lead on a preparedness plan for the city.
The question is not if, but when. And it's going to happen. So it's important for the community to be prepared for the emerald ash borer's arrival, because it will cause havoc with our ash trees. Across the country, there are billions of ash trees that are at stake here, and millions have been killed by the emerald ash borer. When I started working on the plan, 19 states were infested. Now it's up to 22. So the emerald ash borer is on the move. The larvae create a gallery right under the bark, as you can see here, and it's a serpentine kind of gallery where they're chewing away and getting larger.
As part of the preparedness plan, Aquilashik and others have been conducting an inventory of the ash trees in the area. With this information, they've been able to make recommendations to the city council regarding the potential economic impact of the insect, as well as steps the community can start taking now to brace for that impact.
When the emerald ash borer arrives, it can spread quickly throughout the city. And the emerald ash borer will kill the tree. The tree becomes very brittle and becomes dangerous to both cars and people. So it's important that street trees be addressed promptly before they become this kind of brittle tree that can snap and fall on people or their property. And in the parks, we have the same situation where you have trails and all sorts of ash trees along the trail. So it is sort of a hazard potential with these dying ash trees.
Montpelier has established a tree nursery with a wide variety of species. For now, those trees are used to replace current downtown trees as they're needed. But the idea is to have a stock of trees ready to replace the town's ash trees when they die. Another way of raising awareness is the Look Up Vermont campaign, where bright purple ribbons and information on ash trees around town encourages community members to keep an eye out for signs of infestation, which often starts at the top of trees.
You'll start seeing some decline and dieback in the tops of the trees. One of the things that's been noticed recently around the Northeast is that you start seeing significant amounts of woodpecker activity in those trees, and they'll start to peel off pretty big portions of the bark, trying to get at the insects to feed on the larvae in the tops of the trees. So you'll start to see patches of bare bark showing up, and that's been a pretty good way of actually identifying the insect initially in areas.
The hope is that an infestation will be spotted early enough to slow the spread, and possibly even give communities the option of using pesticides or other measures to protect some of their most valuable ash trees until the threat passes. But these defenses are expensive and not always effective. For now, the best defense is a strong offense. In Montpelier, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. Joining me now is the Director of Forest for the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, Steve Sinclair. Welcome to you. Let's start out with identifying the ash trees. We saw the trees in Rebecca's story, but there weren't any leaves on the trees, so maybe you could give us a hand there.
Well, sure. Ash trees, like all deciduous trees, have leaves. In the case of an ash, it's a compound leaf. So, a maple tree has a single leaf that's attached to a petiole to a branch, and as the photo shows, an ash tree is a compound leaf. So it usually has anywhere from 7 to 11 leaflets that are attached to the tree, and that's how you can identify an ash. Another way to look at it is the branching, and if you look at this prop here, you'll see that that on certain types of trees, and in college my professor called it madcap horse, and that stood for maple, ash, dogwood, cap for the Caprifoliaceae family, and then horse for horse chestnut. Those are the only trees that branch oppositely. And if you see this branch here, you'll see that the branches are on opposite sides of the stem all the way up through. The same thing would hold true for the leaves. The leaves would attach opposite of the branch. And there are only certain that madcap horse trees, of which ash is one, that branches oppositely. So look for the compound leaf and then the branching that is opposite one another on the stem.
Now, we saw that Montpelier has an action plan. Is that unusual?
No, if you think most communities in Vermont have emergency management plans to deal with natural disasters. Well, unfortunately, if Asian or emerald ash borer comes into Vermont, that'll be a natural disaster as well. So we're seeing over 20 communities that have started to develop these ash preparedness plans, and that includes, in addition to Montpelier, Hartford, Enosburg, Rutland, and South Burlington. And we've been working with our partners at UVM Extension and state and federal partners to assist in the development of inventories and plans for when EAB comes into the state.
Mm-hmm. And so some people might ask, why worry about one species of tree?
Well, ash is a native Vermonter. It's been here in our forest forever, and it's a very important tree, and we want to have that species diversity which we rely upon on Vermont's forests.
Well, also, too, tell me a little bit about some of the benefits of the ash tree.
Well, ash and all trees in Vermont, we're not just talking about cords and boards. We get environmental benefits from trees as well. And as this chart shows, we get increased improvements in water quality, air quality, property values, stormwater retention. So trees have a ecosystem value, and in a particular, on an ash tree, an average of $200 per tree of these ecosystem values that trees provide our communities.
That's amazing. And so in March, the Agency of Natural Resources hosted a photo contest to raise awareness about the emerald ash borer. And you brought some pictures along, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, well, this is a picture that was sent to us by Gary Salmon of a beautiful, magnificent white ash that's in the city park in Rutland City.
That's a huge tree. And then we have another picture to show you.
Now, this is another ash tree that was on the green in Middlebury College. Many communities, after the Dutch elm disease came through in the 70s and 80s, planted ash because they're very salt tolerant and hardy, grow in many types of soil conditions, and became a very popular street tree. And now, of course, we're concerned because there's so many ash trees in our communities. If emerald ash borer comes in, we could lose a lot of our street trees.
And the seeds of the ash tree are important as well.
Yeah, the seeds of an ash are very similar to the maple in that they're a samara, so they hang down. A maple seed has two sides to it. They talk about a helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
An ash seed, very similar, but a single stem, and it'll travel vast distances and is very well liked by wildlife, in particular woodcock.
I think we have a picture of that too that we can take a look at. Oh, there
yeah,
he is.
so there's a picture of a woodcock. So many wildlife use ash as a seed food source in the fall and winter.
And insects as well.
Yeah, not all insects are bad for trees. We focus on emerald ash borer as being bad for trees, but there are many good insects for trees, and this is a borer that's very effective for trees.
And also the ash wood is great for bending and basket making.
Yes, Native Americans have used brown ash and black ash for basketry, and then of course we have many different products that come from ash in Vermont.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me some examples too? I guess hockey sticks for one.
Yeah, hockey sticks, baseball bats. The wood is very easily turned and made from products. This is a picture from Woodstock at the Marsh Billings Rockefeller Natural Historic Park, and the woodcarver Dan Ober from Lincoln, Vermont sent this picture in.
And there's another use for ash. We have another picture that we want to show too.
Yeah, ash has a very distinctive bark, wood, very similar to the oaks. It's a ring porous, and so it's used a lot in furniture and in framing, as this picture frame shows.
Okay, and as a forester, the most important message that you want to share with people about the ash?
Well, I think most instances where emerald ash borer or Asian longhorn beetle has been found is by citizens. So we rely upon our volunteers to look up at their trees and look for signs and symptoms of emerald ash borer. Probably the best one is this photo right here.
Let's flip it over this way.
All right.
Quickly.
Sorry.
Yep.
Which shows the blonding that Paul Frederick talked about, where the woodpeckers come in after the insect has come into the tree and they start tearing away the bark. If you have an ash tree that has this bark that's starting to break off, that is possible a sign of emerald ash borer, and we would love to receive a call.
And how can
folks.
people reach you?
Probably the best place is vtinvasives.org, which is a website that's maintained by UVM Extension, Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, and the Agency of Agriculture.
I want to thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.